I'm Ken Goodenberger this morning, our Director of Music. And welcome to worship. And now it is time for us to silence our cell phones and quiet our hearts and our minds as we prepare for worship and as we listen to this beautiful prelude. I'm Deanna Self-Price, one of the pastors here at Shepherd of the Hills, and welcome to worship on this rather cold but beautiful, beautiful Arizona morning. It is great to see all of you here with us today. And if you're with us for the first time this morning, we want to say thank you so much for coming to worship with us. We are delighted to have you here. And we hope that you will find this service uplifting and empowering for you. Thank you for making our worship that much richer this morning. We are so privileged to have you here with us. I am not Ken Goodenberger, our Director of Music, as you well know. He is away this weekend, and so our choir has the weekend off, but we are very blessed this morning to have as our worship leadership the Singing Shepherds. Will you say hello to them? We're so happy that you're with us, Shepherds. It's our practice, because this is a place of open hearts and open minds and open doors. It is our practice to invite everyone to fill out a prayer and presence card. We want to invite you to drop that in the offering plate at the time of offering, except if you are a first-time guest with us. Hang on to that card. We have a welcome center just outside the double doors of the sanctuary. We want to invite you to go to that welcome center, because we have a gift there for you to say thank you so much for being with us in worship today. If you'd like to introduce someone who's with you this morning and you want us all to say hello to them, there's a pink welcome card. It's in your pew rack in front of you. Fill that out, drop that in the offering plate at the time of offering, and we'll do the rest a little bit later on in our service and welcome your friend or your guest or whomever it is that you have worshiping with you today. I think that that's all that I have for us to share this morning, so let's go ahead and stand. We're going to sing some of our favorite songs and hymns.
Please be seated. Let us be in prayer. Open our hearts and spirits this day, O God, to hear the good news of your power and presence with all your people. Fill our hearts with rejoicing as the words are proclaimed in song and story. Remind us that you are with us, as you were with your people when they wandered the desert, guided by a pillar of fire. Enliven us through the magnificent words of the prophets, especially through the ministry and love of Jesus Christ. Amen. The Lord your God will raise up a prophet like me from your community, from your fellow Israelites. He's the one you must listen to. That's exactly what you requested from the Lord your God at Horeb on the day of the assembly when you said, I can't listen to the Lord my God's voice anymore or look at this great fire any longer. I don't want to die. The Lord said to me, what they've said is right. I'll raise up a prophet for them from among their fellow Israelites, one just like you. I'll put my words in the prophet's mouth, and the prophet will tell them everything I command. I myself will hold accountable anyone who doesn't listen to my words, which that prophet will speak in my name. However, any prophet who arrogantly speaks a word in my name that I haven't commanded to speak, or who speaks in the name of other gods, that prophet must die. A reading from Paul's first letter to the Corinthians, chapter 8, verses 1 to 13. Now concerning meat that has been sacrificed to a false god, we know that we all have knowledge. Knowledge makes people arrogant, but love builds people up. If anyone thinks they know something, they don't yet know as much as they should know. But if someone loves God, then they are known by God. So concerning the actual food involved in these sacrifices to false gods, we know that a false god isn't anything in this world, and that there is no God except for the one God. Granted, there are so-called gods in heaven and on earth, as there are many gods and many lords. However, for us believers, there is one God. All things come from God, and we belong to God. And there is one Lord Jesus Christ. All things exist through him, and we live through him. But not everybody knows this. Some are eating this food as though it really is food sacrificed to a real idol because they are used to idol worship until now. Their conscience is weak because it has been damaged. Food won't bring us close to God. We're not missing out if we don't eat, and we don't have any advantage if we do eat. But watch out, or else this freedom of yours might be a problem for those who are weak. Suppose someone sees you, the person who has the knowledge, eating in an idol's temple. Won't the person with a weak conscience be encouraged to eat the meat sacrificed to false gods? The weak brother or sister for whom Christ died is destroyed by your knowledge. You sin against Christ if you sin against your brothers and sisters and hurt their weak consciences this way. This is why, if food causes the downfall of my brother or sister, I won't eat meat ever again, or else I may cause my brother or sister to fall. Here ends the reason.
Hear the good news from the Gospel of Mark, the first chapter, verses 21 through 28. Jesus and his followers went to Capernaum. Immediately on the Sabbath, Jesus entered the synagogue and started teaching. The people were amazed by his teaching because he was teaching them with authority, not like the legal experts. And suddenly, there in the synagogue, a person with an evil spirit screamed, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are. You are the Holy One from God." "Silence," Jesus said, speaking harshly to the demon. "Come out of him." The unclean spirit shook him and screamed, and then it came out. And everyone was shaken and questioned among themselves, "What is this? A new teaching with authority. He even commands unclean spirits, and they obey him." And right away, the news about him spread through the entire region of Galilee. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So one Sabbath, Jesus was preaching in the synagogue, and in the middle of the service, a demon-possessed man began making a commotion. "Have you come here to destroy us, Son of God?" the man hollered. And Jesus commanded, "Be silent and come out of that man." And after a fit of convulsing, the man returned to his right mind. And the people were amazed by Jesus' authority and power. He commanded demons, and they obeyed. That's a pretty interesting story, isn't it? Can you imagine if something like that happened here some Sunday morning? What would we do? How would we respond? What would we think? Well, sociologists will tell you that it perfectly reflects the worldview of that first century Palestine. In Jesus' day, people believed in demons, and they believed that these demons inhabited dark and shadowy and unclean places. And if a person wasn't careful around these dark and shadowy and unclean places, a demon might just pounce on them. These demons were believed to be the source of every illness from blindness to epilepsy. Even plagues and mental illnesses were blamed on demons. But people don't believe in demons anymore. Science has shown us that many of the things blamed on demons in the past really have other causes. Epilepsy is most often caused by scar tissue on the brain. Plagues are caused by viruses and bacteria, and mental illness is caused by biochemical imbalances in the brain and dysfunctional patterns of relating to others. What we've learned ever since the first century has freed us from that ancient worldview which held that demons were running rampant in the world and they were the cause of all of humanity's sufferings. Today, most of us subscribe to the treatments modern medicine has to offer. I'm sure that the last time that you were sick, you went to a doctor. Now, granted, you might have asked one of your pastors or maybe a good friend in the congregation to pray for you. But those prayers were probably along the lines that God would give wisdom and guidance to the doctors, to the physicians who were treating you, right? Science has freed us from our primitive beliefs. I can't remember the last time that somebody asked me to perform an exorcism. But just as an aside, I can tell you that yes, the subject has come up on more than one occasion in more than one church that I have served. But even though you and I are products of our 21st century worldview, I'd like to suggest this morning that from a metaphorical perspective, there are still some demons that plague our lives. In ancient societies, people avoided darkness and they protected their homes against demons with signs and symbols and other charms and magic. Well, today, people avoid dark places and they protect their homes with security systems against demons of crime and violence. The reasons are the same. We have experienced fear, maybe even the terror of someone or something hurting us or robbing us of our lives or possessions. Have you seen that commercial for Ring? I love that commercial for Ring where the woman is someplace at a spa getting a pedicure and something comes up on her phone and it tells her that there are these 3 guys standing around on her front lawn and she's not home, and all of a sudden the guys are kind of creeping around and she suddenly talks to them over her phone and says, "Well, hello, what are you doing here?" And they're, we're just noticing there's some problems with your lawn. Well, what I need you to do is get off of my lawn. I love that commercial. I love that she's getting a pedicure while this is happening. I can tell you I have been in that place where it's really frightening, because Paul and I had that experience of being robbed once in our parsonage. And it was really scary. They cleaned us out. And we were so afraid after that. I know how that feels. There are demons out there of crime and violence. In ancient societies, people believed that it was possible to be possessed, taken over by demons that could make their lives a living hell. Today, people are possessed by things like desires and lusts. There's a lot of that going on in the news these days. And addictions. Have you ever had to watch your loved one attempt to quit smoking or quit drinking or stop taking prescription drugs? You ever tried to stay on a diet? We won't go there this morning. The end result is the same. Something else controls us. Something else takes our lives and makes them unbearable, makes life unmanageable. You know, the church has always believed that demonic forces exist in this world. The first question that we ask every new member when they are about to be received into this church family is this: do you renounce the spiritual forces of wickedness, reject the evil powers of this world, and repent of your sin? We ask this question because thousands of years of human history have shown us that there are fears and there are anxieties and there are appetites that crouch in the darkest places of people's hearts and souls. They are the demonic forces that cause racial violence and domestic abuse and the most heinous of crimes. They are the tempters that entice people to throw away their lives and their souls for money or for sex or for drugs or for power. But the church has also always believed that there is a remedy against the demonic forces that threaten to destroy us and this world. And that remedy is found in the second question that we ask our new members when we are about to receive them into the life of the church. Do you accept the freedom and the power that God gives you to resist evil, to resist injustice, to resist oppression in whatever forms they may present themselves? Do you accept the freedom and the power that God gives you? I think that that is the point of this story this morning. Be silent and come out of him, Jesus said to the man possessed by the unclean spirit. And the Gospel of Mark says, the unclean spirit, convulsing him and crying with a loud voice, did come out of him. And they were all amazed. In the Gospels, Jesus always does an interesting thing with those thought to be possessed. He neither ignores them nor does he ever become impatient with them. But he also does not allow himself to be taken captive by them. Instead, he administers freedom to them, and he speaks truth to the disease and to the demons that possess or control someone. This is the powerful ministry of Jesus. He meets the disease and the demons of the world face to face, and he delivers God's people from that possession by speaking truth. You see, like that man in the synagogue, we are all possessed at some point in our lives, at some level. That is our reality. And each of us is in bondage to that which keeps us from experience freedom and release. Bondage which keeps us from enjoying this life and the world and each other in the way that God has designed for us. Each of us can be driven to the brink of insanity by our own demons and by the sense of being possessed by something that just isn't quite right, whether it be our actions or behaviors or a chemical substance or the actions or the behaviors of someone else. And that's why each of us comes to Jesus. Even if we're not aware of it. We are all like the one in the synagogue, screaming and hollering and seeking somebody who can restore us to sanity, to put things right in our minds and in our hearts and in our spirits. What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? We all ask that question at some point, demanding an answer. Because the reality is, we too need that first ministry of Jesus at Capernaum. We too need for Jesus to come to us because we recognize that there is something in him that overwhelms us, something that cleanses us, something that speaks truth. to us. A truth that we need to hear about the lives that we are leading. A deep truth, a loving truth. A healthy church is where each of us can bring our own demons face to face with Christ. A healthy church is where each of us can bring our madness to the love and the holiness of the one who has the power to restore us to sanity. Christ can heal us. He need only say the truth, speak the truth, the word to our hearts and to our minds and to our spirits. The people in the first century were amazed at Jesus' teaching because it had deep authority, the authority to speak to their deepest needs and even their most unclean possessions. Jesus had the authority of love. Love that would eventually triumph over every demonic force and every evil at work in the world. Jesus had the authority of love, which said that God is always at work in the world, bringing about God's goodness, a goodness that is so powerful that even the vilest person to ever walk the face of the earth could be saved from the demons that held them captive. You know, our founder, John Wesley, gave us guidelines. Gave us guidelines to teach us how to be well and how to be healthy and how to be strong in our faith. He gave us 3 simple rules. 3 simple rules to help us live spiritually so that those forces in our lives that sometimes threaten to overwhelm us, that sometimes threaten to overtake us, that sometimes keep us captive and in bondage won't have that kind of power over us. Do you remember what they were? 3 simple rules. Do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. I think that's what Jesus does today in our story. He practices the 3 simple rules. Think about it for a moment. When he silences that unclean spirit, he stands up to it. He stops it from doing further harm to that man in the synagogue. Do no harm means we stand up for justice. Do no harm means that we speak out against the harm being done to others in this world. But it's not enough just to do no harm. Wesley also reminds us that we are to do good as well. In our story today, Jesus also does good. He speaks truth to the unholy power that has laid claim to this possessed man, and he calls it out into the light of day, not only for the good of the one possessed, but also for the good of all of those who are witnessing the event. God's people, standing by, watching this, are so moved, they are so amazed that the word begins to spread. And because in this Jesus there is finally hope, there is the possibility of new life, and there is the possibility that healing can happen. What is hope? Well, it's finding the path through Christ to stay in love with God. 3 simple rules, gospel style. Do no harm, do good, and stay in love with God. Find that way to stay connected. Find that way to be in the presence of the Holy One. God really does give us the power to resist evil and injustice and oppression in whatever forms they present themselves in our lives. This is the good news of the morning. that the same Jesus who spoke with the authority of love and power is still speaking today, and he is still preaching, and he is still teaching in our midst, speaking to the insanity that is around each of us, and to the demons that may reside within us or within our lives. He's speaking to us face to face and speaking truth to what's happened to us and to our lives. And most of all, he's inviting us to be healed, inviting us to be restored to our right minds and hearts and spirits. And so today we are face to face with the holiness of God, with the truth of Jesus Christ. And so what this story tells us is that no matter what is happening to us in our lives right now, we do not have to be afraid. We do not have to be afraid. We do not have to be slaves to what's going on around us, slaves to the demons that threaten to overwhelm us, whatever those demons may be. Because there really is a way to live. And there is a love that is filled with power and authority that can and will set us free from whatever it is that makes our lives unmanageable. And so this morning, when we hear the question, "What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth?" When we hear that question asked by the demon in the story, we on this side of human history can say this and respond with this word. What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Everything. Everything. Jesus has everything to do with us. So do no harm. Do good. Stay in love with God. Amen.